So this is going to be a pure tactical analysis video based on a question I received in the Patreon Instagram group chat. If you do want to sign up and get access to in-game discussion and analysis, I'll leave my Patreon linked in all the usual places. But the question was essentially asking, should Amorim stick to the 3-4-3 system and his strategy both in and out of possession, or should he look to change things from game to game? Now I'm specifically going to be looking at United in the middle third, and in this phase of play we are used to seeing United in that 3-4-2-1 kind of shape with the two players in the half space, and against a 4-4-2 defensive shape, which a lot of the sides in the Premier League do use in the middle third, sitting very narrow and compact. This is optimal from a tactical standpoint, as the back three gives you that wider base to circulate the ball around the opposition's front two. And even if the opposition's two wide midfielders look to sit slightly higher up, in line with the two centre forwards rather than the double pivot, Amorim's 3-4-3 system still enables you to create an overload by having the wing backs sitting slightly deeper, creating a 5v4 in this part of the pitch, with there usually being a 2v2 in the centre of the pitch as the opposition looks to man-to-man press the double pivot. And the way to exploit this overload is by trying to draw the two centre forwards in very narrow as central as possible, and then shifting the ball out to one of the wide centre backs. In this example it's the right-sided centre back, where you can then create a 2v1 against the opposition's left midfielder. Now if you watch Amorim's Manchester United or Sporting side in this phase of play, you'll often see that the midfield double pivot are sitting very close together. And this is so that the opposition's central midfielder on the side that the ball gets shifted over to is sitting in a narrow position and therefore unable to cut off the pass between himself and the wide midfielder on his outside. And this is where you'd have someone like Ahmad dropping into this half space looking to receive the ball. But you've also got the option of playing the ball down the outside of the opposition system, with your right wing back being the free man. And this is where we see the benefit of creating an overload on that right side, with it being either a 2v1 or a 3v2 in United's favour. And this puts the opposition's left-sided midfielder in a dilemma. If he looks to hold a wider position and cut the passing lane out to the wing-back on his outside, this is going to stretch the space between himself and the central midfielder on his inside, opening up that passing lane from United's right-sided centre-back into the right interior forward in the half space. From here the ball can then be worked into him, and then you want your right wing back to look to run off the back of the left-sided midfielder, essentially trying to beat him in a 1v1 race, get goal side, looking to exploit the space that's created by the opposition's left back, moving high and infield with the right interior forward in the half space, leaving space on his outside and in behind for the right wing back to overlap into. However, if the opposition's left-sided midfielder chooses to hold a narrow position and look to cut the passing lane into the half space, this is then going to open up space on his outside for your right-sided centre-back to feed the right wing-back, and if the right-sided centre-back is clever, he'll move forward with the ball as much as possible, looking to entice the opposition player forward, meaning that when he does play the pass, it's then harder for the left-sided midfielder to get back across and close down your right wing-back, allowing him to drive into the space. However, if the opposition was using a front three rather than a front two out of possession, this is where Amorim may need to change his possession setup, but it's not really a change of system, it's more just some positional rotation that can happen during a game, with United being able to seamlessly switch between the two, and that is the ideal, because during a game, the opposition either intentionally or maybe unintentionally are going to switch between defensive shapes, be it temporary during a certain phase of play, or a more permanent tactical switch instructed by the manager. And so if United can seamlessly switch from one possession setup to another, this is going to allow us to create and then exploit overloads. And I think this is where a lot of people get the whole idea of changing system wrong. A lot of people will look at it and say, well, the system needs to change depending on which players are available, when in reality it mostly depends on the opposition setup. For example here, if United were to continue with this back three or back five against a narrow front three rather than a front two, when the ball gets shifted outside to the right-sided centre-back, whereas against the front two in the 4-4-2 system, it was easy for United to create an overload on this right side, it becomes a lot harder to do so against a defensive shape with just 3 players in the forward line rather than 4. Because first of all, with the extra man in central midfield rather than in the front line, the opposition can go man for man, not just on United's midfield double pivot, but also on the player in the half space. The left back doesn't have to move on to whoever it is in that position, say it's Ahmad for example. He can hold a wider position ready to press the wing back if he receives a ball. But also in this situation, the opposition's left winger doesn't have to worry as much about the pass going inside, because he knows there are players who are man-to-man pressing them, and the left back behind him doesn't have to worry about getting drawn out. And so he can position himself slightly wider in order to cut off the pass into the wing back. Now United could still progress the ball into the right wing back by playing a pass into this player in the half space if he drops off and bouncing the ball out to the right wing back. That would get the ball in behind the opposition's left winger. But not only is it an incredibly hard passing sequence because the opposition are going to be man-to-man pressing those players as they're receiving the ball, but also because the opposition's left wing back doesn't have to move into a narrow and central position with the right interior forward, because with the extra player in the midfield line compared with the forward line, one of the opposition's central midfielders can move across and pick up that player. The left back is now free to move out onto United's right wing back as soon as he receives the ball, meaning that unlike the previous example, he doesn't have that space on the flank to now drive into. And so in this type of situation against a 4-3-3 defensive shape with that narrow front three, United would be better off shifting to more of a back four, with the back three becoming a back four as the right-sided centre-back, for example, shifts into a wider position on the outside of the opposition system, picking up a position that resembles a typical right-back. And then you just have the wing-back on the opposite side drop into a deeper position resembling more of a full-back, with the right wing-back pushing up high in order to pin the opposition's full-back backwards, which will be important as the move goes on. Now because you've got a 4v3 rather than a 3v3, you now have an overload with your two centre-backs against the opposition centre forward. Now what's going to happen is, just say the left-sided centre-back has the ball, the opposition centre forward is going to look to apply pressure by arcing his run, looking to cut the pass off to the centre-back on the other side. And so this is where United would need to use a double pivot. Rather than trying to play a direct pass into the right-sided centre-back, which is obviously not a good idea with it being cut off, the left-sided centre-back can look to hold on to the ball, entice a centre-forward to press him and get closer before bouncing the ball into one of the double pivot, who should be looking to make a quick double movement in order to create space, looking to maybe use a checked run, moving forward before jumping backwards, creating that yard of space to receive the ball and then first time bouncing the ball out to the centre-back on the other side. And if United are able to do this efficiently, the opposition centre-forward will get caught on the other side of your left-sided centre-back with him having applied pressure, which now leaves your right-sided centre-back as a free man, and now allows you to create that overload on the right side against the opposition's left-sided midfielder. And this is where being able to fluidly move between possession shapes comes into play, as now with the right wing back sitting high and the right interior forward in the half space, if the right-sided centre-back is able to move forward, which he can because he's got space, and entice the opposition's left-sided midfielder into pressing him, the United right-sided centre-back now becomes a free man. And even if the opposition's left-sided midfielder does well to cut the passing lane out wide, United could feed the ball into the player in the half space, and now when it gets bounced out to the right-sided centre-back, because the right wing-back is holding a high position, pinning the opposition's left-back backwards, the right-sided centre-back has the space to now run off the left-sided midfielder, receive possession, and now United have a 2v1 against the opposition's left-back, with our right-sided centre-back and right wing-back, with the opposition's left-sided midfielder having been taken out of the game, having moved out to close down the central centre-back as he moved forward with the ball. And this is why the wide centre-backs in Amorim's back three have to be kind of hybrids between full-backs and centre-backs. As in this type of situation, moving to more of a right-back position, someone like Mazraoui is going to be a lot more effective than someone like De Ligt. And I am going to discuss this on a video that should be out in the next few days, maybe even tomorrow, on Nuno Mendes and Alvaro Fernandez, talking about why they could actually be good fits for the left-sided centre-back role, so subscribe to the channel for that. But this use of the wide centre-back in the back three becoming more of a full-back can also actually be effective in getting in behind the opposition's back line and being able to create in the final third. For example, let's just say the ball gets moved over to the right side, and in this example the left-sided midfielder for the opposition has managed to get goal side, and so you can see there's a 4v4 on United's right-hand side. Now the best way to look at this is to isolate each individual player against the opposition player. And in this pattern of play which I'm about to show you, you want the right-sided centre-back to make a third man run, running off the back of the opposition's left-sided midfielder. Let's say the ball goes down the line into the right wing-back, the right-sided centre-back should now be looking to burst forward ahead of the opposition's left-sided midfielder, trying to get in front of him, and because the opposition's left-sided centre-back and left-back are going to be pushed up tight onto United's right interior forward and the right wing-back, they're essentially being positionally pinned high up the pitch, opening up space in behind them, and if the right-sided centre-back can get ahead of the left-sided midfielder and make that third man run, United can look to exchange some quick passes on that side and try to release the right-sided centre-back in behind the back line. And so rather than the right wing-back or the right interior forward being the players to make the run in behind, it's their static movement which is pulling the opposition's back line on that side high up the pitch and opening up that space for the right-sided centre-back to be the one to burst in behind. And so overall, to answer the question, I don't think Amorim needs to move away from the back five. He just needs to implement the positional versatility that United can adjust the possession shape in-game from one phase of play to another, which is mostly going to be dependent on how the opposition is set up and how United can create overloads and then look to exploit them. Now just quickly before I finish, I am thinking of writing an ebook where I basically just write out my whole tactical theory like a kind of like a dissertation, where I just show you some tactical images and basically just showing you game models and tactical ideas that I have. If you are signed up to the Patreon when I do finish it, you will get it for free. So if you do want that, it will be slightly cheaper than just buying the ebook. So if you are in the Instagram group chat when it does drop, which should be towards the end of the month, you will get that for free. So I'll leave my Patreon linked in all the usual places. But also make sure you subscribe to the channel, as I am planning to drop videos on Nuno Mendes, Kvaratskhelia, Vlahovic and anyone else we are linked with in January.